Hey everybody, welcome to The Bottom Line. I'm Michael Noland. Tonight's video is my response to the official 2025 Beatles vinyl tag. Now, if you're not into vinyl, don't worry. That's not a prerequisite for tonight's excellent video sponsored by Rob Walker, Let the Music Play, an excellent channel that you should go to immediately after you see this video and sub. But what really turned me on were the questions that Rob's vinyl tag posed. I was so impressed, I even wrote them down in my secret decoder handbook. Let's take a look at these questions. Nope, that's my mom's famous secret zucchini bread. No, you can't peek. Oh, here it is. All right, question number one. For many of us, the question that goes back to the dawn of time, the Beatles or the Stones. You know, if you took them as just a classic rock, blues-based rock band, I could see an argument for the Stones. But when you take a look at everything that the Beatles represent as an entity versus the entity of the Rolling Stones, to even consider the Stones over the Beatles, to me, is a bit ludicrous. They not only had two of the greatest songwriters of the 20th century at their beck and call, they even within the group developed a world-class songwriter out of George Harrison. Hell, even Ringo occasionally dipped his toe into songwriting. All right, so it was always about the power of the song, the music, all right? And they broke barrier after barrier. You know, a lot of third, fourth generation Beatle fans, they listen to the Beatles music and all they hear is stuff that sounds okay, right? All those effects sound okay, but see, they've been raised on music that everybody has every special effect and it's all dialed in, and so that doesn't surprise them. You've got to go back in time, folks, when some of these records, when Sgt. Pepper, you know, hit the stores, we had heard nothing at all like that album. This was an entity unto itself, and there's not a single Stones album I would put on the level of Sgt. Pepper. And Sgt. Pepper is not my number one Beatle album. It's not even in the top three. But enough of that nonsense. Let's get on to Rob's second question here. What was the best thing to come out of Liverpool? That's easy for me, folks. The best thing to come out of Liverpool were Liverpudlian sailors, seamen, the Cunard Yanks, who on their ships would go to foreign lands, specifically the United States of America, and bring back culturally significant items such as clothing, right? And music. They would often pack crates with 45s. They just didn't have any use for, because the United States never really appreciated that this thing called the blues was culturally significant and established and created in the United States. The Brits got it right away, and everything came out from that exchange of items, including the Beatles and whatever band you might choose from Britain that was that significant. That was the greatest thing that ever came out from Liverpool. Now, question number three, he says, what was the best band out of Liverpool? I can only answer that with one response. It was 1964, USA. We had a small exchange with Britain. We've had a few over the years, haven't we? And we experienced yet another British invasion, right? And that was 60 years ago, last January. So out of all those bands, which would include a lot of Liverpool bands, Who are we celebrating? And how many videos are you finding right now currently on YouTube that is celebrating the anniversary of all those other Mersey-based bands? Those other bands that came from Liverpool, who gravitated through, everybody that Brian Epstein scooped up. It was the Beatles that survived that whole genre by outgrowing it, right? A lot of those bands didn't, and that's just another thing that makes them truly great. And the best band out of Liverpool as well. Now, Rob saved the best question for last here. I love this question. What is the most essential Beatles album? All right. Now, he chose the Blue Album, reluctantly, as I recall, over the Red Album. And I think he's doing that for a couple of reasons. First of all, most people get the Blue Album first, I would imagine, Rob. And second of all, they're now triple albums. So you're going to get a lot of Beatle music, a lot of people saying you're going to get a lot of the best of the Beatle music. Rob even saying his one criticism of the Beatle albums by themselves is he feels there are some filler material. I don't agree with him there, but I can see why he would choose this album, especially when you think about all those second generation fans. I think of what Bruce Cologne told me. He's from B-Sides, another excellent channel that you should sub to. And he told me, as a second generation Beatle fan, it was the Red and the Blue albums that made him a fan, and that encouraged him to later go and buy all the Beatle albums, and now he has every Beatle album known to man. All right, so I can't criticize Rob's choice with this, but that's not how I see a Beatle album. And to me, that's a compilation album. And worse than that, it's a compilation album after the Beatles had already officially split. If I was to choose a compilation album, it would be this one right here. Now, you don't get 3 albums with this, but at least this is an honest Beatle album. I consider Beatle albums canon primarily, in my head, the US market albums, and even better yet, the British versions of the albums. And I see, the Magical Mystery Tour as an EP is valid, as well as the Magical Mystery Tour album from US as valid. The Beatles Oldies is valid, and this album is valid. Plus their core 13 albums, 14 if you include Let It Be Naked. All right, so I would have chose this, but this to me is not the most essential Beatle album. Now, if I was going to go Rob's route and get the biggest bang for the buck, I would get this album. I would choose this album. All right, the Beatles Revolver, remastered, remixed, reinvented, out from the Twilight Zone into reality here. I mean, you get a remix, remastered stereo version in this box. You get an excellent mono version of the album. And then you get a double album besides those 2 albums of outtakes. And you get a wonderful book to read. And it's a marvelous package. I love it. And it's my second favorite Beatle album of all time. Currently my favorite, actually. But I would not have chose this. No, to me, you gotta go back to the core Beatle albums that were offered us by the Beatles. And when I do that, there's only one album that becomes essential to me. Now, it's not my number 1 album, although for decades it was, but I'm talking about the White Album. Not only do you have every style of music known to man, it seems like, on this album, but you have 4 George Harrison compositions, 1 Ringo composition, an additional Ringo vocal that John composed, some of the most weirdest avant-garde stuff you've ever heard, along with the most melodic, wonderfully crafted songs, both by John Lennon and Paul McCartney. You know, John and Paul kind of break their avatars on this album quite a bit. By that I mean John, the cynical avatar, snide, rock and roll only guy, giving us Dear Prudence and Julia? Are you kidding me? And then Paul, who is the sweet and wonderful, and he does provide, you know, sweet and wonderful, just like John provides, you know, his snarly side on this album. But he breaks the mold himself with songs such as Helter Skelter, Wild Honey Pie, and the absurd Rocky Raccoon. All right? So this is, with George supplying 4 songs, he should have got 6, and we also should have gotten Not Guilty. I love that version that's available on the anthology. But if I had to choose an album to go with me on a desert island, provided I was, supplied with a trained crocodile to run on a treadmill so that I could play my albums on a turntable created by the professor and was fed grapes by Ginger and Marianne, it would be the White Album, all right? So out of their core albums, the White Album has got to be the most essential Beatle album, in my opinion. All right, that's the video for tonight, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to go over to Rob Walker's channel, Rob Walker, Let the Music Play. Wonderful guy, a Brit after my own heart, and sub him up, all right? And don't forget to give me a thumbs up while you're at it before you go on over there. And that helps with channel growth. It spreads the video to a wider audience base when you do that. The algorithm works like that. And if you haven't subbed to my channel as of yet, it's easy. All you have to do is hit that subscribe to the tribe button, tap that top bell icon. That's always wise, because then you get notified of my many videos that come out every week. All right, I'm Michael Noland. This is The Bottom Line. The bottom line as I see it. That's all I've done here, folks. But as I've said many times, the real bottom line of this channel is the comments. That's how I designed my channel, was to be a comment-centric kind of channel where we all get a chance to talk classic rock and roll. All right? And so when you participate in all of that, you show everybody else that we are the tribe.